And we are back with another episode, this time with the two and only Avi and Yaakov Barr, who besides for their busy respective schedules have carved out the time to found one of the UK's most critical organisations, Jteen. As you will soon hear, the energy between Avi and Yaakov is something to be admired. Two brothers working together to completely change the landscape of teen mental health. Besides for the staggering amount of calls and messages they take through their anonymous hotline, supporting teenagers from all walks of life navigate the challenges they are facing, Jteen also organises workshops, training events and is bringing new material to school curriculums to further advance positive change in teenage mental health. Where do such busy people find the time to found and grow charities? What are the core issues facing teenagers today? How has the landscape changed since Jteen was founded? And what can we do to position ourselves for better mental health? All this and more in my conversation with Avi and Yaakov Barr. A huge thank you to our corporate sponsor Maxim Cohen from the UK Finance Group for his continued support of this podcast. I hope you enjoy. Avi and Yaakov Barr, truly a pleasure to have you both in the studio today. Thank you so much for coming up. It's not the first time I've been hosting two guests, but it's the first time I've had two brothers, and the energy between you seems to be a lot of fun. So looking forward to getting right into this. Yaakov, can you take us through your childhood growing up in Manchester and how you decided to pursue psychotherapy?
Growing up in Manchester, being in Jewish grammar school, it's one of the things actually we both were head boys, and I think that actually already gave me a sort of a feeling of helping people. One of the head boy jobs was to help younger kids, and then just going to yeshiva, and a few of the places in the different yeshivas, we used to help some of the kids that were a bit young and struggling, and that just made me really feel that it's something that I wanted to do more officially. And a lot of these yeshivas that I'd been to, I'd seen kids struggling. There wasn't any infrastructure in the yeshivas that knew how to help them. It made me feel there's something missing here.
After yeshiva, you went into university, and that was your...
Yes, I studied in Israel, and then I went to university to Goldsmiths and did a master's in cognitive behavioral therapy.
Fascinating. Avi, what about yourself? You've earned yourself a great reputation in the legal space, not just as a professional, but as a mensch. People love working with you. Tell us a bit about your upbringing and how you got into your journey of law.
Thank you, Aaron. A pleasure to be here, and thank you for inviting us. I don't think my upbringing was quite as paternal and caring as Yaakov's. I'm not sure if I was quite the best older brother, but I followed a similar path to Yaakov and probably only really deviated when I went to university and studied law, and as you say, became a lawyer on the back of that. I've always had a passion for helping people, and I think it's mainly come out in my career in terms of the fact that I love that side of my job of helping clients through their problems, sometimes even more than the actual legal work itself. And I've also had a strong kind of team ethic to the way that I work. I've always worked with people, tried to nurture. And most probably those were the foundations of what got me involved with Jteen in terms of it having so many parallels to my working life and just being something that I could add value to.
I was going to ask, because sacrificing time for a lawyer, I mean, lawyers are busy people typically, so having that foresight and saying, I want to start something completely voluntarily, did something trigger that desire in your mind? It's like, yes, I can help people, but like, I want to put real time and effort into building a charity that's going to make a huge difference to teenagers. So
they do always say, don't they, if you need something done, ask a busy person to do it. And yeah, I like to think I'm busy, but so many people who are involved in our communities are doing a huge amount of work. And I've always had some community involvement, but Jteen, it's really changed my perspective. I sometimes wonder where I find the time for it, but actually it's the most fulfilling part of my day or my week, the time that I give to Jteen. And from a purely selfish point of view, I love that time that I can dedicate. I was busy. I actually, funnily enough, I'd been a foundation governor at Broughton Jewish in Manchester before we moved to London. And there was a little gap, a bit of a yearning to do something communal. And I think Jteen came at the perfect time. I embraced it at the time, and I've loved every moment of that journey.
Okay, there's loads to discuss here. Obviously, the conversation is going to revolve around teenagers, mental health, and the incredible work that's being done by Jteen in that space. Before I want to get to teenagers, I want to get to children before they get to teenagers. And Yaakov, I want to start with a question for you. I came across a quote in the incredible book called Quiet, written by Susan Cain, The Power of Introverts in a World That Can't Stop Talking. She writes the following paragraph, and I want to throw it at you, give us some guidance in this space. She writes as follows: consider the mechanism by which kids acquire their sense of right and wrong. Many psychologists believe that their children develop a conscious when they do something inappropriate and are rebuked by their caregivers. Disapproval makes them feel anxious, and since anxiety is unpleasant, they learn to steer clear of antisocial behavior. This is known as internalizing their parents' standard of conduct, and its core is anxiety. So before we talk about teenagers, just trying to understand that at the core of any child learning this language of good, bad, safe, dangerous is a mechanism called anxiety. How are children expected to keep that tamed as they transition into adulthood?
Oh, well, I thought we were going to start off with an easy one.
Yeah, no. I'm not a nice host.
Look, I think very often when parents are thinking about how They're going to bring their children up in the healthiest way possible. It's not necessarily always what they say, it's how they say it. And typically when psychologists are thinking about the anxiety that can be caused because parents are being too critical and creating that sort of anxious child, it's not that we now need to disarm parents and say you can't criticize or you can't point out that where your child is going wrong. It's how you do it. And that's often missed out. And I'm always a bit worried about telling parents that they mustn't do it because you're going to cause emotional problems, and then when they're teenagers they're now going to be emotionally scarred for life, because then all we're doing is now we're saying to parents, everything goes because you must be careful that our children are so fragile. No, they're not. And yes, parents are there to help them have a moral compass about what is right and what is wrong. It just has to be done in a sensitive and a caring way.
Fascinating. And at what point does that journey into teenagehood actually begin? What's happening in that child's brain at that point? When does it happen, and what is happening at that transition?
Well, the transition, they say, is actually getting earlier as sort of the world that we live in, and children are exposed to so much more. So teenagers, really, it's not like 13, 14 anymore. Right. It's sort of 11 and even earlier now. Wow. And parents, if you know your child, then you know what is suitable for them and what is an appropriate message for them. And some children are a little bit more sensitive, and it's just their nature, and therefore we have to tailor make the message for them appropriately. And other children can cope with being told a bit more old-fashioned style, this is unacceptable and not good.
Fascinating. What are some of the common issues being faced by teens today? And Avi, you can jump in this. You've been involved in Jteen, and Yaakov, obviously, between the two of you, you're seeing the cases on the ground. What are the challenges that are coming up on a day-to-day basis through Jteen?
I think the amazing thing when it comes to the challenges is that we'll actually see, and I've had this verified, if you look at the challenges today as compared to, let's say, a helpline from 20 years ago, some of them are very, very similar. Teenagers will struggle with friendships, always have, and always will. Friendships are a big deal. So all the sort of managing around the types of friendships, and some struggling to get friends, some with the wrong friends. And that's always a big one. Of course, then we're going to have some of the sort of 21st century problems, which is our social media and being bullied and those sort of areas.
Bullying happening on social media as well. Did you come across that?
We're definitely seeing this. The social media world is a scary world, because you've got young people being now exposed to the world. They don't always have the tools to be able to deal with the messages that they will see, and the ramifications when a young brain is targeted and sometimes bullied really cruelly can have massive ramifications. And we do see on Jteen, we get teens messaging in about messages that people have said about them. And the thing is that very often the people doing it might not have actually done it on purpose. But once it's out there, that's the scary thing. And adults, we don't really connect to it because it's a different world nowadays. But once it's out there and it's there forever.
Meaning as much support as you can give the teenager in that moment, they've still got to deal with the fact that the writing is just still on the wall for everyone to continue seeing, and the embarrassment and the pain.
It really is like that. I know somebody recently who he was on Shidduchim, and 5 years ago there were some pictures that were posted when he was on the beach, and who knows what he was doing, not for this podcast anyway. And it's there, and even though he's now a different person and he's a reformed character, he knows, and it's affected him, that the evidence is there.
It's interesting because what attracted me so much about the whole Jteen concept, which has actually evolved far more than I would have thought at the time, or any of us would have thought about, is the challenges that kids face with bridging their Jewish identity to dealing with the challenges of the outside world. And I think that has come into even sharper focus probably since October the 7th. You read in the papers about, or in any media, about challenges with anti-Semitism. And that has been a huge growth area for people contacting us, which we'll talk about later, links to our J Student program. Right. So for me, so much of the reward, but also so much of the challenge comes from kids nowadays really finding challenges with their Judaism at all different levels and coming to us because we are uniquely positioned to be able to help them through those challenges.
Meaning they're being exposed to ideas about religion, about Judaism that they were never exposed to before, and now they're suddenly realizing, how much do we know? How comfortable, how confident are we in this space? And that's there.
Yeah, I mean, it links back to social media. Kids have got access to a far more diverse range of views on everything than they ever had before. And that's creating questions and challenges, and not always people around them that they feel comfortable talking to. And that's where we come in.
Fascinating. Avi, while you're at it, on the topic of social media, I want you to just weigh in a little bit on social media use for adults, because so many podcasts, so many discussions are just like, oh, the teenagers, the children, the social media. But I think the issue is equally as important and potentially damaging for adults as well. And sometimes it's masked under the concept of it's for work purposes, or we need to see what's going on, and this is where my clients might be hanging out. But you're somebody who's, especially in the law space, in the property space, you've built an incredible reputation for yourself, for your business. Most of your clients, high profile, your business takes place in boardrooms. They probably couldn't care less whether you did or didn't post what you had for supper or where you went for vacation. How do we come to think about our presence online, putting ourselves out there, showing what we've done, showing what we've accomplished, trying to be in front of people the entire time? As a professional, what perspective do you have on this alongside the business you've built as well?
That's an incredibly difficult question to answer, and you could almost do a whole podcast just on that. But I'll give you a couple of thoughts from my perspective on the challenges and perhaps the way to navigate them. The world out there is desperate to see people almost laid bare. We want as much personal information about people as possible. And that's what social media encourages us to do, to share until we've got nothing left that we've not spoken about. But as you say, that has huge dangers. It has dangers for the person himself or herself, and has dangers for the people around them, particularly impressionable children that think that is the way to live, and that the adulation that you get online has some value and currency, and it really doesn't. It's dangerous, but we do have kind of a bit of a push in the professional world to try and create a bit of a personal brand. You do it and you're brilliant at it. You've created this whole image around the podcast, which has taken you to a different space than you were before and given you greater credibility in your market. And it's brilliantly done. I think the key is not oversharing. And I think the key is to keep it professional, so that, for example, if you post something online, whether it's on Instagram or LinkedIn, how would you feel if someone in your family saw that? Or how would you feel if a recruitment consultant or a prospective employer saw that? If you're comfortable with it, fine to post. If not, keep it to a discussion amongst your family, amongst your friends, but leave it off social media, because as Yaakov says, it stays there and it haunts you.
Really beautiful. Yaakov, back to you. With regards to bullying, you touched on it briefly, but I want to understand if you can creep a little bit into the nature of bullies. What are they trying to achieve? What are they getting at when it comes to bullying, and what the ramifications are for children who are subject of this experience?
Well, bullying nowadays is, we tend to associate old-fashioned bullying as physical bullying and beating people up behind the bike sheds. But bullying nowadays is very different. It's very subtle. It's a much, much harder bullying to detect. And this is where the schools really, really struggle, because I can see if someone's got a black eye, but I can't see if someone's got a black heart. Just because somebody's sent a text to, around the class about somebody, is that bullying, or is that just regular banter? And it's a very, very fine line. And everyone's struggling with this to try and determine exactly what is considered as regular teenage behavior. And we mustn't stop jumping up and down because people are just, as we would say, boys are boys, or something which is really damaging. And it's really up to the parents and the schools to be able to hammer down the message that we have to be really, really careful what we say, because what we think might just be taken in jest actually can have huge impacts on people.
What can be done to a child who's on the receiving end of these?
Well, I mean, if I tell you, I remember seeing a boy who, whether you call this bullying or it's just very damaging, it probably would be tantamount to bullying. But I remember a teacher saying to a boy who I saw 2 years later, and I think that he was being a bit mischievous in school, and the teacher took him outside and he said, you are never going to achieve anything in your life. For some children, that is just like water, as they would say, water off a duck's back. He'll forget all about it, and that's that. But for this boy, because he's more sensitive, that stuck with him, and that message has, he took that with him, that he will never be a success. And that's why we have to be so careful, just because we don't know what type of words. Another one, I remember the teacher used to call him he was always, probably a slightly miserable child, had a hard upbringing, and the teacher used to make a joke and said, "Oh, it's not Tisha B'Av the whole time." And some of the boys used to call him Mr. Tisha B'Av. And now in his mind, and we're talking about, the scary thing is that we're talking about, he's now a 50-year-old man. And he told me, and these are the words he told me, he said, there's not a day goes by when at some point in the day, I've got that Mr. Tisha B'Av in my mind.
This is not bullying between children to children.
Exactly. These are adults or children that just haven't thought about the impact of their words.
Wow. It's really powerful. What about children from financially deprived families? Are they more likely to face either mental health challenges or just bullying? Are they more subject to issues because of their financial situation, or does that not play a role at all?
I mean, it could well be that the way our society tends to view people, more affluent, might hold a slightly, higher than some of the people that won't be, and it could be that they are going to feel inferior. Typically, you might often find somebody who has had life struggles can cope with it slightly better, got a bit more resilience to be able to deal with it. They faced challenges before, and therefore they may not get shaken so much. Where someone who's been more sheltered, it could be that it would affect them more.
Looking for finance solutions that actually deliver? Introducing the UK Finance Group. Led by multi-award-winning finance specialist Maxim Cohen, the UK Finance Group delivers cutting-edge finance accessibility to the funding you need fast. Residential mortgages, bridging finance, commercial mortgages, business finance. Whatever your goal, the UK Finance Group is here to make it happen with advice you can trust and solutions that work. And it's not just one service. With the UK lender, the UK property agent and the UK accountant all under one roof, the UK Finance Group is your complete financial powerhouse, and they are ready to serve you. One group, endless possibilities. That's the UK Finance Group. Backed by experience, built for results. The UK Finance Group. Reach out to Maxim Cohen today.
The one topic that's been percolating in my mind quite a while is extroverts versus introverts. And Avi, I want you to weigh in over here. Do you notice a pattern in your line of work of people who are on the quieter side, how they navigate challenges that they're facing on a day-to-day, interacting with people, getting through projects, work? Is there any relevance in their personality as to their ability to achieve?
It's a really interesting question. And I think that question resonates with me because it's also very much part of our ethos and mindset at Jteen, where every single individual is looked at as an individual, and there isn't actually a single answer to that. The way that we work at BBS and my particular management style is I'm very, very much about understanding that person, their needs, their strengths, their weaknesses. So you can have someone that's really on the quiet side, introverted, they might call them, and you can have an extrovert. And both of those people have got valuable roles to play, but you need to understand what their needs are and build their roles accordingly. So there's no point taking someone that doesn't particularly have confidence in front of clients and thrusting them in front of a client. You may decide that you want to try and help them build up those skills. I think the point is that in any organization, whether it's business, whether it's the charitable sector, whether it's actually helping people, you always have to try and find a solution that fits the person's needs. And we try to do that. And I think we're quite successful at it. I think people generally enjoy their roles. And I think most people in life enjoy what they do professionally when they feel supported for who they are, not who they should be.
Fascinating. And Yaakov, and for teenagers, does that affect their ability to react with confidence and strength towards issues that they might be facing? As with teenagers, we're saying there's just a general set of issues that teenagers are facing. Does their personality or the way they've been wired as an introvert, extrovert, how does that play itself out?
Well, it's very interesting. I think it depends how you define an introvert and an extrovert. The way I define it, but it might not be your definition, is they ask a question sort of, if you had free time, what would you want to do? Would you want to go out and hang out with friends, or would you prefer just to stay at home with a book? I think we're different than that. I think I am the introvert, actually. And introverts often get assumed to be quiet people who don't like to be in a crowd, but not necessarily like that. But if I've got my free time, I'd rather just be, and it could just be because I spend the whole day listening to some quite difficult problems. But I think that's where we're different. You like being in a crowd.
Yeah, I think that's quite true. I love reading, but probably not for more than about 5 minutes at a time before my mind's already wandered on to the next thing to do. But yeah, I've always felt, Baruch Hashem, in all the roles that I've had, that I've been able to express myself in a way that works best for me. And I guess, Yaakov, you've also kind of gravitated towards a role that does involve kind of a bit more thought and introspection in terms of the way that you deal with problems.
Yeah, but I think for teens, probably because we're living in a world where popularity is such an important value and we consider it as a status symbol. Right. I think the introverted teens do struggle because for them, it's more about less but more meaningful friendships. And so I'll often see teenage boys who will say, they don't have a lot of friends and they're not always being invited. And for them, they're just happy having those closer connections, which are harder to come by. So it probably is it's a world where the extrovert is at a certain advantage.
Right. We do value that. I mean, there's a lot of noise, like you were saying, Avi, before, about putting that brand out there, not making a noise about yourself, but pushing your face forward in order for people and for your network to understand and appreciate what you do. So we're putting this big emphasis on the extroverts.
It really is like that. With therapists also, because I have a training course and I train therapists and I teach them, how to be a good therapist. What I don't teach them, and I often have to tell them that you can have all the knowledge, but success, unfortunately, I think is sometimes a bit sad that this is the world that we live in, but the successful professionals, probably as much in therapy as it is in Avi's world, in law, it won't just be how much law they know, how much therapy they know, it's how much they're able to network and brand themselves and get around and speak to people. And sometimes the people that make the most noise actually aren't the good professionals, but they will be the busy ones. And it's frustrating sometimes because I see people that have such great potential, but they're not the type of people who are going to sort of throw themselves out in the world.
And I imagine sometimes, and we definitely see it at Jteen, it's an issue where parents are so desiring their kids to fit to this kind of social utopian being that they'll kind of push them to be who they're not.
In a teenager's mind, there's probably a very crushing experience too.
Sure, they might actually be quite happy who they are as kids, quite content, but their parents want them to be something else.
Especially when the parents themselves are maybe a bit like that, and they're quite sort of well-known characters, and therefore they want to expect their children to also be in the same way, and the children, their nature is just not to be like that.
But let's speak practically. If a teenager is listening, or even if an adult's listening to this and they are more on that nature, like what are some of the real qualities that they may possess that may get them further in life, just purely because they're quiet and more thoughtful and more processed, rather than all the excitement and bells and whistles? How can that carry them further, actually?
Well, really, if you think about it in terms of what's real in life and what the real qualities in terms of relationships, in terms of one day they're going to be a partner, they're going to be a husband or wife, they're going to be a parent, the values and the nature of being sensitive and down to earth and genuine, and maybe being at home more and having a toned down lifestyle, are going to help that person infinitely more than somebody who's not connected to themselves. I always tell sort of young people when they're complaining and they're sort of feeling that other people have it better, I always say, your time will come. Right now, it doesn't look like you have all the qualities, because as in the teenage world, they're just not given the same value as somebody who's much more outgoing. But in time, you will, the roles will reverse.
Learn to appreciate that. It's really fascinating. I want to talk to you about screen time. And you put a post out about what happened in Sweden with the schools reversing back to paper. Give us the breakdown of what took place in Sweden and just the issues we face generally with screen time, what it does to the brain, screen time during the day, screen time before bedtime. Just give us a bit of a breakdown about this.
So we often talk about screen time, and the world has moved on. There's no point trying to now start saying that all screens are damaging and your child is now going to have permanent mental health problems because of screens, because we see plenty of people who are on screens and they're not all going to visit the therapist. But we are seeing that a number of schools, I remember we discussed this at one point together, because some of the schools, especially after COVID, where COVID, they needed screens because everyone was remote. And then when the schools came back after COVID, the screens stayed. And this was something, we in terms of our Jteen, we try not to get involved with schools and politics. We're here for everybody. We respect the different ways of education. But this is where we really actually, at the time, we sent some letters to different governors, and because for children to spend all day on the screen and then to do their homework on the screen and then to play games or to watch on the screen.
What were you seeing as a result?
What we're seeing, one boy actually even sent me, because I wanted to sort of document some of the evidence to show the governor what's happening. And in one of the schools, one of the boys sent me a short clip of what the lunchroom looks like now that there's screens in the schools. And you're now seeing, instead of the kids playing football or cricket like we used to play in Jewish grammar, you're now seeing them all gravitating around the screen. And that is going to, if that is how our children are now spending their hours, so they're not talking to each other like Avi said before in terms of social media, they're losing the skills of recreation, of talking, and these are the years where they really need it. Right. And it's not a surprise where you get so many parents who are calling up saying, my child just spends all day long in his room. Well, we've kind of conditioned it. I mean, what do you expect? If that's how you've brought them up, they're not suddenly going to say, right, I'm now training for the London Marathon. Right. And it does worry me, because as the years go on and screens are being more and more embedded in education, where does that leave us?
So what happened in Sweden? They did a full transformation. Give us the breakdown.
Yes, Sweden were a friend of mine sent it to me because he knew that we'd sort of campaigned to try and get the schools to do a bit of a U-turn. And Sweden did a U-turn, and Sweden realised that actually having all the schools having screens and the teachers giving the homework via screens actually was reducing the educational performance in the schools. Right. And they had, I think some of the schools probably deep down know this, but it's quite hard to dial back. And Sweden decided, no, we want to give our children a real rounded education.
At the cost of 110 million euro or something. Before we move on to the work of Jteen, I want to just sort of close off this segment of the conversation. And Avi, please feel free to weigh in. What would be the most important gift a parent can give their teenage child?
Definitely not an iPad. Time. It's free, but it's the most precious commodity out there. And in our lives, there is so little of it. But speaking from a perspective of a working dad, and we mentioned COVID, I actually think from a personal point of view, COVID was one of the most life-changing experiences for me because it taught me how little I knew about my kids' lives. From being one of those people that spent pretty much every day in the office and then a bit of work in the evening, and even when I was present, I wasn't really present because my mind's drifting to what I need to do at work. And actually COVID forced a completely new reality on me, sitting down, doing work with my kids, playing with my son in the garden. Actually, one of the most powerful and most enjoyable parts of my life. I learned so much about myself and how much I'd done wrong up until that point. And in some ways, I needed that wake-up call and benefited from that time. So for me, if you give your kid anything, it's time and a listening ear.
Well, that is a good one. It's hard to bet that. I would say...
even practice that.
Avi went first. He's like, I'm taking this one.
I would probably say, and it sort of may merge. I would say the greatest gift a parent can give to a child is unconditional love. And that means that I love you for who you are, not like what we said before, what I want you to be. And that means that if you are the type of person that isn't going to get 100% in tests, if I can see that you're trying and you're doing the best that you can, then I don't love you for your grades. I don't love you for your progress. I love you just because of you. Someone told me yesterday, in such a lovely way that a mum said to her daughter, the daughter was being naughty and the mother was very upset. I can't remember exactly what happened, but the mother was very upset. And when she was putting the daughter to bed, the daughter said to the mum, like, are you really angry with me? Are you not going to love me anymore? And the mother said, no, of course I love you. I love you whatever you do, however naughty you are. Of course I love you. I'm just not very happy with the way you behave today. And I thought that is such a beautiful message. Imagine that daughter now grows up with that sort of feeling. You know, that itself is a massive gift.
Really special. Okay, Jteen, carrying the responsibility of Jewish teenagers, an award-winning anonymous hotline, online events, workshops, talks with other professionals, parenting talks, crisis response. This isn't just a reactive service, to the community, but it's really a fundamental organisation that's embedded itself into communities, schools, university campuses across the UK. Walk me through the journey, Yaakov, Avi, of launching and operating such an organisation.
Wow. So Jteen actually was going to start before COVID, and one of the people that was going to pioneer it actually suffered quite badly during COVID and delayed our launch, but actually probably sharpened the focus and made it even more important that we started as an organisation. The Jewish community is an amazing place. There are gemachs, there are helpful organisations that deal with almost anything you need. But mental health has always been a bit of a blind spot. And teenage mental health, even more so, because a lot of the older generation just believe that people should just be able to deal with their problems. And that has always been kind of a bit of the British stiff upper lip type mentality, just get on with it. But actually, what kids are dealing with it was 2020, but in 2025 it's just as current, are more challenges and deeper challenges than they've ever had before. And we talked about social media, and there's plenty of others as well. So for me, the real drive and what got us started was a need, just such a gaping hole in support being provided by our wonderful community. And we've started to go some way to filling that. There's a long way to go, but we're on a journey. and we're going to carry on making a difference and an even bigger difference.
I mean, I think when it comes to mental health, seeing it on a day-to-day basis and working with across the communities and seeing, many people from either non-Jewish backgrounds or not, or more traditional backgrounds, I think what I found, especially in the Jewish community, was that so many issues were just left, and it would frustrate me because I would see young people and I would always be left thinking, if only they had got help before. Why did I have to wait till they're in crisis? And it always bothered me, like, what can we do to try and preempt? As you said, was all instead of reacting, preempting it. And there was one story, and I think that's when I decided, right, we're doing something. And then I went to Avi and I said, right, we've got to do something. And I've actually still got the letter at home. What happened was that it's almost like it's a story that you sort of would read in a book, but it actually did happen. A mother was cleaning out her son's cupboards and drawers before Pesach, and she found at the bottom of the drawer a letter, and the outside of the letter it said, "Dear Hashem," and who could blame her? She was a bit curious, so she opened the letter, and in it was the pain that this boy had been going through for a long time, the guilt, because he'd seen inappropriate things, and he'd felt guilty, and he felt that he was a terrible person and a Russia, and Hashem's not going to ever be interested in him, and he didn't know what he could do and who could say to anyone, and he was sort of almost like, this letter was like, please forgive me, and I don't know what to do anymore. And when the parents found the letter, they then said, we've got to try and help him, and they brought him round, and it was literally within 1 or 2 sessions we spoke about it, and I helped him sort of see a bit of a more rounded picture of Hashem and the challenges of being a teen. Within 2-3 times, that was it. He'd gone, smile on his face, and sorted. And it made me think, that boy was helped because the mother happened to clean out his drawer, and he happened to write a letter, and he was willing to go for help. How many people are there out there that they've got letters in them, within their hearts, and nobody knows? And at that point, I just felt we've got to create a service that it's going to be easy for people to reach out. Nobody's going to ever know. There's going to be really quality staff and personnel able to help them. And let no teen ever have to walk around with this guilt or the pain or the anguish. And I think for me, that was, I remember, I think the next day I just said to Avi, we've got to do something.
Yeah, and I would add to that, because what particularly inspired me about what Yaakov had in mind and his vision was not just what we would call support, which is helping the kids that were struggling, but the whole prevent idea, about really making a difference, about doing something that is not just going to change that child on that particular day, but will help his or her family because they've got a more settled and content teenager, will help the people around them, their peers in school, their teachers, the community, and the difference that we can make by helping a teenager at an early stage of a struggle, who can then go on and run the rest of his life, get married, have kids, be a stable person, be hopefully the next Jteen counsellor because they got that help and can pass that on to other people around them. That's what we wanted to create, and that's what we're on the way to creating.
That's how it's really fleshed itself out, from just being the hotline, but to all the different events and the crisis response and the different talks and the online workshops. All these different things that are going on are really just building blocks to reinforce those younger people so that when they're older, there's something much more. I mean, a lot of the issues that we're seeing today with married elder people, perhaps, you're saying, from your line of work, Yaakov, how much of that could have been mitigated had they had the right intervention?
Absolutely. I think as a Jewish community, we do have a bit more infrastructure now for crisis. I tend to think that whenever something's happened in the community, we jump up and down, and we do have more to try and deal with crisis. And I don't think anyone on your podcast has ever quoted the Archbishop Desmond Tutu.
Not
but
yet.
He famously once said something along the lines of, instead of trying to pull people out of the river, let's go upstream and work out why they're falling in the first place. And I think that exactly typifies what Jteen's all about. Yes, we're there for crisis. We have a safeguarding team. We have therapists. And, on a day-to-day basis, we may have to deal with the crisis. But actually, the real work, and there's so much more we need to do, as Avi said, but we already are doing a lot, it's the prevention and making sure they don't fall in the river. And it can be done. I don't think people believe that it can be, but it absolutely can be.
Fascinating. when I was researching for the interview, I was trying to think back to my own teenage years. I was wondering to myself, if there was something that was bothering me, would I have had the confidence and courage to pick up a phone or to text into an anonymous hotline for support and guidance? My answer to myself was probably not. I probably wouldn't have been able to do it. And my question is, how are you getting these numbers? How are you making this reach? How are you giving and instilling in these teenagers the confidence that this is a really safe space for them to reach out, get the support they need? And you're competing with TikTok, you're competing with Instagram, you're competing with everything. What's your road to that success been?
It's a really good question. We think about it a lot, and we're always working on how to make ourselves more accessible, and why would teens want to reach out to us, and we've got all sorts of different ways that we do it. We first of all make sure that our posters and the things up in schools, they're meant to sort of be almost like welcoming, and that Jteen is not there if you're in crisis. We're there. Our typical slogan will be "What's on your mind?" So we want teens, and many of the teens that message in are not actually in crisis. They can be high functioning teens that the world will see as problem free, but we all know that everyone's got their challenges, everyone's got their difficulties. So, and we go into the schools and we try to do workshops. We try to show a personal side to Jteen, because we want people to realize that we're not just this sort of abstract helpline. We are real people. And so far we've really seen that the teens have responded. And also we are living in a slightly different world, and get kids nowadays saying, I'm so stressed, or I'm depressed, and adults would never use that type of language. So I think kids, the world that's changed, celebrities are talking about their feelings much more. It's become almost in that every celebrity has to have, an emotional health problem.
In the Jewish space as well. We're seeing that as well.
We see it more and more. I think it's great. It encourages everyone to talk about it. So in some ways, actually, I think younger people, when it comes to emotional intelligence and understanding, are probably in a way more advanced than us as adults.
The first ever slogan that we actually used at Jteen is actually still my favourite. It was "Every teen can text." And that's almost been our go-to as an organisation. What we've tried to do is break down those barriers by making kids understand that just because you want some help or need a little bit of help with something on a day-to-day basis, or when something comes up that you don't feel you can deal with. And it's partly about creating resilience, and that's what we do very much at Jteen when we do engage with the kids, help them deal with those issues themselves. But it's also about being accessible, and that's why our Prevent program is hand in hand with our support program. There is no point just having a text line or a phone line where people go to with their problems, because probably like you, Aaron, they won't come. But if they see us in the schools, or their parents are talking about it at the Shabbos table, about what a great organisation it is, and the teachers are saying to the kids, you can go and speak to Jteen, it's not a problem. We're normalising reaching out. And that is our goal, and will remain part of our mission.
Fascinating. I mean, the results are incredible. Just doing a bit of research, over 200,000 text messages exchanged with young people in need, more than 3,000 meaningful conversations, supporting teens through their darkest moments, 800 plus school workshops delivered, breaking down stigma and opening vital conversations. Talk to me about some of the on-the-ground impact being made by the Jteen team, Yaakov.
Well, I'm actually going to read out. It's a shame we're not on video, so I can't prove it. It could be that I've made this up.
I can vouch for it.
It's almost on a night-by-night basis. I mean, sometimes the work is huge, and sometimes it does feel that it's a bit much. But like last night, I was actually supervisors. We have a team of supervisors who are monitoring every single conversation, whether it's by text, by WhatsApp, by phone, because we really have to make sure that our standards are as high as can possibly be. And I was supervising last night, and the final message that the team texted to the person who took the conversation was, "Yep, thanks. You have no idea how many times you have legit saved me from killing myself, and I mean it." It's messages like that show us that we absolutely are so vital for so many teens. This teen would have had a number of conversations. We don't know who they are, but they know exactly the role that we play in their life.
That was difficult to listen to. What does that feel like for the team when they're sitting there seeing, like you said, they don't know who they're speaking to, but they know someone out there has just made a big decision?
I personally feel that we are blessed, and the volunteers love it. And I get messages from the volunteers who are training for hours, and they're getting regular supervision. It's a big responsibility for them. And again, they don't know who A lot of them are doing it purely from the goodness of their heart. We have therapists that we pay, but the volunteers will often message me and say, this is the most rewarding part of my day. It's just unbelievable to see the impact that a conversation can have on a young person.
I feel very privileged. Of all the organisations out there, I think we probably get the most almost instant reward on what we do when we help a child, a teenager or a student, and they come back to us with those sorts of messages, and it's just so empowering. It's just knowing instantly that we've made a difference. I mean, I see some of my friends and they work with incredible organisations, and they might work on a building campaign or something for 2 years, and eventually they see the fruits of their hard work, and that's wonderful. But we get it nightly. Every single night there will be some child somewhere that is reaching out to us to thank us for how we've improved their lives. Don't get anything much better than that.
And I tell you what's also quite interesting is it's not always the thank yous. It's sometimes there might be a situation where a teen messages in. What they don't know is that if this situation would go on a bit longer, then they're going to end up having a serious mental health problem. And because we've managed to intervene at the right time. So, for example, there was a 15-year-old girl that messaged in a couple of weeks ago that had been bullied. I don't remember all the details, but the girl had said that she's feeling really, really down and depressed. And the last 2 or 3 days, she started skipping meals. Now, I know that if that goes on longer, then who knows the chaos. I mean, if we get into the world of eating disorders, that can be a lifelong imprisonment. And yet she's oblivious to that. We gave her a few sessions of phone therapy, and she didn't thank that much.
She didn't realize,
because she didn't know that she was so close to having that, and we won't get any thanks. And the parents may not have even known that she messaged in, so nobody in that case will thank. But we know what we did.
I was at a Kiddush on Shabbos about 2 years ago, and a man who I didn't know slapped me on the back and said, "Are you involved at Jteen?" And yeah, I told them I'm involved. So I want to thank you. So since COVID, my daughter hadn't been to school for about 2 years, petrified of going back to school, social anxieties. And then the week before, she'd come downstairs in her uniform and was ready to face going back to school, just in time for her to get through her GCSEs, pass, and be able to move on to her A-levels. And the parents had no idea what had happened until they went upstairs to her bedroom and found Jteen written on this girl's book with a big heart multiple times. And I'd love to say that the donation matched that child's future earnings potential that we helped create. But no, seriously, it's life-changing.
Unbelievable. Really incredible. Just the depth, like you're saying, Yaakov, the depth of how much could have gone wrong without that early intervention, which is really the entire foundation of Jteen, is getting into people as early as possible and just redirecting their entire future. And you can't put a price tag on that.
Absolutely. And that really is one of the keys for the community to deal with mental health. And it's really the world. We're all reactionary. I mean, look at the NHS and look at the funds that are being put into all these IAP services and therapy services. But these are when children already have, or adults already have, mental health problems. But just imagine if we had that infrastructure that we could help 10-year-olds, 11-year-olds, 12-year-olds with resilience and help them to understand how stress works, and to, it would be a different world, different ball game.
Wow. Really, really incredible. I want to talk to you about this beautiful book that I've got on my table, Mastering Your Mind, 10 Proven Life Hacks for Teenage Happiness and Success.
And you didn't have to even pay for it. You got a free one.
I know. We're not going to publicize that, are we? Incredible piece, just in terms of the layout, the content, the way you've structured the different chapters, and it's an interactive piece, and highly recommend any parent who's got a teenager to go and grab a copy. What did you want to achieve with this? Was this a direct tool for teenagers? It's going into the school curriculums, is that correct?
Yeah.
Walk me through this journey, because this sounds absolutely remarkable.
It's really exciting. It was the book that I wrote that I wish I would have had. It's 10 life hacks. It's now been extended to 12, but it's 10 life hacks which cover the life skills that really every teen just needs to know. Many people might read it and say some of it sounds pretty basic, and that's really the purpose of the book. It's not meant to be something overly deep. It's there to give the tools practically for any teen to be able to cope with the big issues that all teens go through. So whether it's friendships, whether it's stress, whether it's low mood, whether it's learning how to speak up and talk to and trust people, how to motivate yourself when you can't be bothered, and just giving them, not just telling them what to do, but to also give them exercises so that they can actually implement it into their life.
Fascinating. And what's that journey been like to bring that into the schools? What's that look like?
So it started off as a book, and I was really sort of bowled over because I was told that, teens don't really read books. So you're bringing out a resource for teens that is unlikely to go very far. In fact, the bookshop who does the distribution originally only wanted to bring in about 50 copies because, how many people are going to buy, teens are going to buy a book? Well, 2,000 copies later, it sold really, really well. But then again, this is how we do things at Jteen. We just decided, well, why can't we take it to the next level? Why can't we get every child at every school teaching the children life skills? But then the school said, but we're so busy, we don't have time for it. So we said to them, but you do have to teach, according to the government regulations, you have to teach all the PSHE, and you've got a whole load of different criteria they have to teach. So they said, if you can show that your resource is able to tick every box, then the schools will go for it. And so we spent time adapting the book, changing it, adding things, and now it ticks every single box. And it's the first resource for Jewish schools, which is completely in line with the Torah Hashkafa, will teach the kids life skills, and is going to be fully in line with all Ofsted and government criteria. So I'm really, really excited about it. This September, hopefully, the first schools are going to pilot it.
Incredible. Avi, you must be so proud of Yaakov.
Well, don't ask him that question.
No comment, as we say in our profession.
It's unbelievable. Really, really incredible.
It's very inspiring. Seriously, it is very inspiring, and it's market leading in a sense of we've created a market,
right.
And that's what Jteen is about. It's about making a difference, and this book really makes a difference.
Really, really powerful. I want to wind down with an actionable takeaway for adults or teenagers. Anyone who's listening to this episode, I want them to come out with an idea. We've discussed a lot about mental health. We've discussed the incredible impact that Jteen is doing with their infrastructure in schools, out of schools. I've recently come across this idea in a number of books. It's been referenced in a few books that I've come across, and I wanted to ask you, Yaakov, to just expound on it a bit and let us take something out of this for the future. Written by the psychologist, and I'm going to try and not botch his name, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. How well did I do that?
I am not helping you on that one at all.
Okay, he writes about the topic of flow. The best moments in our lives are not the passive, receptive, relaxing times. The best moments usually occur if a person's body or mind is stretched to its limits in a voluntary effort to accomplish something difficult and worthwhile. Now, if we could take something out of this conversation, Avi and Yaakov, to better our state of mental health, to better our ability to wake up in the morning with energy, with strength, with composure, to take care of the stuff that we need to take care of. Again, both whether it's a teenager listening to this or an adult, how can we take this concept of getting into a state of flow and to do things that we don't necessarily have to do over a consistent period of time to help us get into a better, healthier mental state of mind?
It's a great question. And it's something that we must ask because we've talked about screens, and screens are really an antithesis of this. Screens take away, and ChatGPT takes away all our creativity. And what we want to do is actually do exactly the opposite. So if parents really have an obligation, that's what one of the hacks that is mentioned, that to me is the one that I tend to talk about the most because it's titled CBB, Can't Be Bothered. And this is where kids are demotivated and there's a lack of creativity and they're not getting absorbed into activities. They're not working hard because they've been conditioned not to do so. What parents can try and do is to really push them and encourage them to stick at certain tasks. They learn piano, but don't expect to be the expert straight away. Sometimes parents are saying, did you enjoy it? Did you enjoy it? Even if you didn't enjoy it straight away, let's stick at it, because we all know as sort of adults, but the things that we're going to find the most meaningful and the most fulfilling are going to be those activities, those hobbies, those interests, our passions that we're going to persevere. And it's that word, perseverance is, to me, one of the biggest qualities that a parent can try and give to their children. And with that perseverance, then you have a child who's able to almost lose themselves. That's why they say flow activities, it's losing yourself in something that you really enjoy, whether that's learning or woodwork or art. And we don't see enough of it. It's a dying art for young people. And if parents can try and encourage it, they're giving a beautiful gift to their children.
That was really incredible. Avi, As we close up, a teenager listening to this or parents who might want to guide their teenager in the right direction, if they sense something's going on or they see a red flag or they just feel like their child can do with a bit of the extra support, how are parents or teenagers being directed to your services and what can they expect once they do reach out?
So I think there's two really easy follow-ups. One's really easy and the other one will take a little bit more mastering but should become natural. First thing is go and visit our website, www.jteen.co.uk. Make a note of the resources that we've got there. Make a note of our key phone numbers, our text line, 07860 058 823, our phone line, 0800 915 4646. Those are important numbers that could help a teenager. And if you've got those to hand, who knows the difference you could make. There's also a deeper point to take away, and that is being there and able to listen to teenagers. And it's hard to do with all the background noise and the interference that we have in our lives. Maybe make a commitment to having one conversation with a teenager around you a week where you just commit to listen, to ask them, how are you really feeling? Not a question about how an exam went or what you did today. How are you really feeling? And then be prepared to listen unconditionally, and you can make a huge difference to a teenager's life.
That's really powerful. Avi, Yaakov, thank you both so much for coming up. It's remarkable to see what you guys have accomplished and how far it's going, how far reaching and how deep the impact is. And Hashem should give you continued strength. I think that's really what you need to just keep at this and to keep building, to keep growing and to keep changing the lives of so many others. Thank you.
And thank you for your support and your passion for improving the lives of people around us.
Yeah, thanks so much, Aaron, for having us.